speaker today, Dr. DonDeYoung, and he's written books. He knows lots about the Bible. He knows lots about science and doing things. He's done presentations for schools and adults and all over to kind of get us excited again about how God created things and how we can see these wonderful things too. So if you would, please give a round of applause to Dr. Young.
Well, good morning, students and teachers. Thanks for letting me join your school for a little while today. It's Friday. That helps. That's good. So I live back in Indiana. Anybody been in Indiana? I was there yesterday. But I do like to come to Colorado and go hiking. You got some great hikes around here. So I'm a scientist. Now, you're taking some science studies in school here. It's good stuff, isn't it? In science, I especially like to look into and study magnetism and light. And I like rocks and minerals, and I like space. So that's all called physical science. It's called physics. That's kind of what I do. So I'm a teacher back in Indiana. And so for a little while today, we're going to look in at some science. And this kind of says, let's take a walk through the creation week. Now, we're not going to really walk, but that's what I'm calling it. This goes back to the book of Genesis, chapter 1, when God made everything. Remember how that story is? So we'll look in and talk a little bit about each of the days when God put it all together, this world that we live in. So this is science, and this is the Bible, and it's the way they all work together. So we'll start right in on day number 1. Now, maybe you can help me remember this. At the beginning of the creation week, it said, God said, let there be light. He turned the lights on. You got that right. You already know the story real good. So I got some pictures to go with it as well. Oh, there's a rainbow that we see once in a while. Genesis 1:3, God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now think about this for a minute. When God turns the lights on, He could have just made white and black and gray, but He didn't stop there. He gave us all these neat colors that we have. So I'm just looking around the front of our auditorium here. You see all these different colors? And we all have our favorites. I see some blue, and I see some red, and some orange bricks. Oh, that green Christmas trees. You know what this shows us? That God's an artist. And He gave us all those colors so that we can enjoy it. He didn't just do black and white, but He gave us all the wonderful colors like our clothing as well. He did that for us. All these wonderful colors that we have. Now, thinking about day number 1, and God makes light, there's different kinds of lights. In fact, here's one that kind of shows up in the summertime around your neighborhood. Have you gone out and looked for fireflies? They show up, like in July and August. Now, that's a different kind of light, these lightning bugs. Now, how does that work? How did God make those creatures? They don't have batteries, do they? They have a hard time carrying them. Actually, they use 2 chemicals that they have inside their little bodies. And when they put those chemicals together, the light comes on. They even have names for these 2 chemicals. They're called luciferin and luciferase. It's very complicated. There's chemistry there. But that makes it work. And they turn the lights on, and you can catch those things. You ought to let them go again later on. And they blink off and on. They kind of signal to each other. Now, when God put all this nature together for us, He also gave us lots of useful things. So we can learn from lightning bugs. In fact, back in the laboratory, we've been able to make these chemicals like the lightning bugs have. And you can buy them. In fact, they take these chemicals and they put them in these things. These called light sticks. Oh, remember these? They're kind of fun. You make bracelets out of these, and when it's dark, when you have prayed, you have these things. So how does this work now? There's 2 chemicals in there, and they're kind of kept separate. And you got to kind of mix them together. Remember how this works? Let me just try this. Now, this is the red one, but you have to kind of break it and snap it and shake it up. They have different colors. Well, that's kind of a cool one. Anyway, they're kind of fun in the summertime. And, you use these when you're playing outside. If you go hiking, you can use these. Or fishing, they make lots of these things. They're very useful. And where did they come up with this idea? How did they get this? You got it? By studying lightning bugs. These are ideas from nature that God gave us, and then we put them together and come up with these neat devices. I think I have another picture of what they look like here. Whoops. Hold on. Wow, we're getting the whole show there. I see, I was pushing the wrong button. I'll learn, I'll get it going here. So anyway, there's a lightning bug on your finger. They don't bite, they're kind of cute little bugs. And there's light sticks. So different colors. Now there's one problem with these light sticks. You know how they last for a couple of hours and then they start to fade out? They don't last very long. The lightning bug can keep on going for several weeks, so they're a little bit better than these things. But learning ideas from creation, I like that. So we got a little night light here. If the lights go off, we have a little light there. All part of day one when God makes light. Hey, let me mention a couple of the people that first studied light and learned about it. You'll see it in your science books as well. Like, here's Isaac Newton. Now, he lived in England a long time ago, and he was a scientist. What's he doing there? He's shining some light through a piece of glass called a prism. Oh, look at the colors coming out. That's kind of cool. He was the first one to study this kind of thing and realized that white light has all the colors in it. Have you heard that name before? Isaac Newton? A scientist? Well, there's an interesting story about him. When he was like in high school, living over in England, people started getting sick. They call it a plague. And people were dying in England. And they didn't have much medicine back then. And the only way that you could stop this breakout of sickness, they had to close all the schools for 2 years. Would you like to do that? Yeah, be careful. Because then you'll have to go to school longer and over the summers and on and on. But that's what they did. You had to kind of spread out and get away from other people so that wouldn't spread the disease. And so Isaac Newton went out and he lived out in the country with his uncle. And he just sat under a tree. He didn't have a smartphone. He didn't have television. He could just think. And God gave him interesting ideas of how light works and how gravity works. And Newton, he also knew his Bible. And he was a godly man. As you study these scientists, when you take your science classes, so many of them they had a high respect for creation. So I like Isaac Newton. He's a good example to us. And there he is studying light. Let me mention just a couple other people here. Maria Mitchell. So you say, well, I never heard of her. She was an astronomer. She studied the sky. And again, she lived, a century ago, so she's gone on to heaven now. But she was another scientist, and she discovered lots of comets. Have you heard of comets? These are lights in the sky that have a long tail on them, and they last for a few weeks. They're kind of cool, part of creation that God has made. Maybe we'll see another comet one of these days. And so she was a comet hunter. And God gifted her just to be able to find those things. And she also liked her Bible, and she was a godly woman. She knew who had made everything. She knew all about this creation week that we're talking about. She also liked arithmetic. Do you guys? No. Yeah. She wrote whole books on arithmetic. Now, maybe it's not your favorite, but the more we know about numbers and arithmetic, we'll just enjoy nature more because it's all around us. She even said that arithmetic and formulas, she said God put those together, and that was for us to enjoy and study. So I like these people here that they were good examples for us. Isaac Newton, Maria Mitchell. I think I have one more person here. Michael Faraday. Now these are all old timers, right? They're gone on before us. But these are some of the pioneers in science. And Michael Faraday as well knew his Bible. He would have made a good teacher even here at your school. He was a godly man. Michael Faraday, he lived in a very poor family in England. He couldn't even afford to go to school. He was homeschooled. And he never learned a lot because his parents weren't too educated either. But when he grew up, he became one of the greatest inventors of all time. He made the first motor, the first generator, the first battery. How do you make the first battery? He just, worked in his bedroom and put wires and things together. So he did a lot of wonderful things like that. And as well, he was a Christian man. So I find all these people as good examples. There, we just talked about Newton, Maria Mitchell, Michael Faraday, neat people who put the whole foundation of science together for us so that we can enjoy things. Hey, we got to get to the other days of the creation week. So just a couple more quick thoughts on light. Oh boy, I'm glad I'm not taking notes. What is that stuff? These are equations, and what they are doing is describing what light really is. This is mathematics. When God said, "Let there be light," He did all of that. These are complicated equations. This is, high-level stuff. Light is not simple. In fact, even up till today, we don't really know what light is. How do you like that? Sometimes it acts like a wave, like a water wave. Other times light acts like a particle, like a marble flying along. We just live with that. We don't know what it is, and God made it. We don't know everything, but we can sure enjoy it, even all the colors we have. So anyway, our last thought of day number 1, thank you, God, for all the colors we have. I thought we needed to have a peacock here on a Friday morning. So we need to go on, so we're on to day number 2 now. Although before I get that, we're talking about the days of creation. Day 1, day 2, day 3. What do you think those days were like? Let me just think about that for a minute. The days in Genesis chapter 1, were those days like today, like Friday? Some people say maybe those were long periods of time, like, it takes God a long time to make animals and plants. But I think that those days of creation were just like this week, with like day and night, just like this week that's gone by. When the Bible talks about the morning and the evening of each of the days, and the first day and the second day. So I'm taking the days of creation just like these days we have. I think God did that for us. Now there's verses that help us with this as well. I know some of you are readers and some not. Here's a verse over in the book of, what is EX? What book is that? Exodus, yeah, in the Old Testament. And it says, "For in 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, and then He rested on the 7th day." This is where we got our calendar from. How many days in a week? 7 days? Where does that come from? That comes from creation, when God made everything in 6 days and then rested on day number 7. Now, this gets a little deep, but think about this for a minute. Some people, they don't especially like the Bible, and they try to forget about it. And because our week has 7 days, they thought, maybe we could change the length of the week so that it's not 7 anymore. Maybe that would help us to forget about creation. That's what some people do. So they've tried these experiments. Let me just show you. Again, some of you are readers. In France long ago, they said, let's have a week with 10 days in it. How'd you like that? Isn't a week long enough already? Do you want to have 3 more days of school in the week? Well, the French people didn't like this either, and they went back to a 7-day week because it's biblical. It's kind of how God put it all together. Now in Russia, they tried another experiment. They only had 5 days in their week. Wouldn't that be crazy? It went like this. They went Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they skipped Saturday and Sunday, and they went right back to Monday again. You'd have to go to school every day. They didn't like that either. You see what they were trying to do? Kind of erase the idea of 7 days like God started the whole thing. You can't do this. And the people got mixed up and they didn't know when to go to school, when to go to work. Our calendar on the wall just tells us how creation was. I think that's why God did that for us, why He spread it out over 7 days. So anyway, we're up to day number 2 now. I just put some water on this picture. On day number 2, it says God separates the water from above and below. Water. Apparently it's like water world. There's water everywhere. And on day number 2, God's going to put some water in the sky. That'll be like clouds, like humidity. And then He's putting some water on the ground, in the rivers and under the ground. Kind of a separation of water going on. I'm glad He did that, aren't you? Now, some people say, okay, the creation week. Day number 2, God kind of separates the water. Maybe He didn't do very much that day. Maybe He, took some of the time off. But actually, what's going on here on day number 2, when God's working with His water, He's setting up the whole weather system. So here's a picture that you'll have in your science books. It's called the cycle of water. Remember how this works? Water kind of, you have a pond over there on the side, and water evaporates and goes up in the air, follow the arrow, and then it forms a cloud. Clouds are made out of water. And then sooner or later, down from the sky comes rain or snow flurries like we had last night. And they come down in the ground and they soak into the ground. That waters your yard and fills the underground, and then it goes back to the pond. Look at how water goes round and round. It's called the water cycle. Pretty cool how this works. I think God was setting this whole thing up during the creation week. Now, I'm not sure that it rained back then yet, but everything was kind of being put in place. By the way, does this kind of thing happen on the moon? Or on Mars? Or anywhere else? This might be the only place in the universe where we have this neat cycle of water going on. And we know how important water is to us. So somebody says, well, I don't like it. It's too cold outside today. I don't really like the weather. Why did God have to make Colorado so cold? And then, you know, you have wind and all that. Got to be a little bit careful. In fact, let's look at a couple other places. Now, remember what our neighborhood looks like in the solar system, the planets? We got Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. It just keeps on going. You'll learn those and how to spell them in school. Let's look at a couple places. If you get a little bit closer to the sun, that would be the planet Venus. You know what Venus is like for weather? It's very hot. The temperature on Venus is like 900 degrees. That's what happens if you get closer to the sun. Well, that would warm you up, wouldn't it? That would be too hot. That would be dangerous. Nobody could live on Venus. Look what happens if you get closer to the sun. It's just too hot. That would melt things. We have not sent any people to Venus. You could not live there. I want to get out of there. Let's go out further from the sun than the Earth is. What comes next after the Earth? Venus, Earth, Mars. Well, what's Mars like? It's very cold. On Mars, the temperature gets down to minus 200 degrees. That's colder than the North Pole. If you get a little bit closer to the sun, too hot. A little bit further, too cold. God has put planet Earth in just the right place. Now, we do have seasons, and it gets cool and warm, but not like that. Thank you, God, for the way you've made Colorado, that we can live here, and we have warm places to live, because it's so nasty as you look at other places. I don't know whose dog that is, by the way, but I just like dog pictures. Jupiter, the outer planets get even colder when you get way out there. Hey, to make us think this morning, let me ask you a quick question here, if I can do this. Snowflakes. Now, this is December, this is Christmas time, and the snow is coming down now and then. So, snowflakes. Here are a couple of drawings. Snowflakes. Do they have 6 points on them or 8 points? There's 2 drawings here. Think about this for a minute, and then you got to decide which it is, because they're all the same. It's going to be one or the other. I'm looking at the pictures. Which one do you think is right? 6 points or 8 points? Okay, we're looking this over. It's kind of like a couple art drawings here. Let's vote on it. Who says there are 6 points? Who says there are 8 points? You know, you're looking at each other to see which way you want to vote, aren't you? Well, you can take pictures of snowflakes and look at them closely. So there's the choice, and the answer is 6. Now, sometimes they're kind of broken. They're partly melted, and so it may not be quite, but that's the way God makes snowflakes. It's the way that the water molecules come together. When one lands on your sleeve this winter, take a close look at it and see if it has 6 points, because it should. So 6 was the winner on that. And by the way, students, have you heard that every snowflake is different? You know, come on, who comes up with an idea like that? Your whole driveway gets full of snow and you can build a snowman, and last winter there was more snow. Well, it's true. Every snowflake is different. Everyone that's ever been is different. You say, well, how do you know that? Because sometimes you get 2 on your sleeve and they kind of look the same. But if you could take a snowflake and look inside it with a microscope, there are trillions of atoms in there. And there's so many different ways they can go together that on the inside they're all different. They might look the same on the outside, but inside Inside a snowflake would be like a whole room full of people. No, it'd be like a whole stadium full of people. And if two people change places, it's a different arrangement. So at least micro, on the level inside a snowflake, they really are all different. Isn't that what God is like, with a variety? Well, every blade of grass is different. Every kernel of corn, every grain of sand, it goes on and on. That's what creation is like. It just helps us to appreciate things. And we need to move on. So day 1 we had light. Day 2 we had the water. We're up to day number 3 when the first life shows up. Plants and trees and flowers and also some dry land. This is what Genesis 1:11 says. The earth brought forth vegetation. So here comes some plants, and I've got another question for you here. Trees. Why did God make trees? Now just think about it in your mind for a minute here. There's lots of reasons for trees, I expect. And let's see what we can think of here. Maybe somebody can help me. What do you think about trees? They make the air we can breathe. Now when you get in your school science, you'll find out that they make oxygen. That the trees kind of breathe the opposite of us, and they make our air so that we can breathe. That's an important one. Now it's okay to cut down trees, isn't it? I mean, look at all the beautiful woodwork we have, like in this auditorium, but we need to save some of the trees and the grass and the plants because they make the air that we breathe. Yeah. Do trees do anything else? Are they good for anything? Why did God make trees? Let's see, what are you thinking of? Yeah. For houses, for shelter, for people or for animals. You're right, that's a good one. Well, got one more?
Yeah, for food.
Oh, food. Apple pie, cherry pie. You're right there. And of course, there's lots of other reasons they're good for shade. Someone's going to say, well, trees were made so we can climb them. You know, there's lots of reasons for trees. There are 2 special Bible reasons. And we just got one of them. You got it there when you said it's for food. And there's one other neat reason for trees that we read about over in Genesis chapter 2, verse 9. They're all good reasons. But God's word says that trees are made for food and also to be pleasing to the eye. They are kind of fun to look at, aren't they? And whether it's summer or winter, there's just something artistic. There's something nice about trees. So we should look at the trees once in a while because they are enjoyable to look at. So anyway, all the reasons are good, and there's 2 special Bible reasons as well. Hey, we're on day number 3. We're thinking about the plants. Let me mention a couple of interesting plants here. Now, I live back in Indiana where we have lots of cornfields. And you've got them here in Colorado as well. We've learned something about corn. Now that's kind of a corn plant on the left-hand side. It's kind of small, but I can see that. It looks like somebody's taken a corn shoot and they pulled it right out of the ground. See the roots? What we have learned is that on a sunny day in the spring, when corn is growing, sunlight goes right down through the leaves, goes right down through the stem, and goes down by the roots and lights them up. If you could somehow dig the dirt out of the way and see the roots underground, there's light down there. That helps the corn grow, solar energy, the sunlight and then the soil and the nutrients. So there's even a name for this. It's called fiber optics. And that's a picture of that stuff over there on the right-hand side where you can kind of send light through some sort of a string or wire. And that's what corn does. So anyway, to think about this, I brought some fiber optics along. Actually, this is interesting. This looks like fishing line. And they can actually send email through this kind of wire here. It's called fiber optics. And the thing is, if you shine a light in one end, it comes out the other end, at least sometimes. So we need to try a little experiment here if we can. Let's see, let me just can you hold this end for us? You don't have to say anything, but hold that. So I've got all this fiber optics, we're all tangled up. What I was going to do is shine a light in this end and see if we can get it to come out that end, because that's the way corn works. What do you think? Can we make it work? So for my light, I have one of these laser beams. This is one of these green ones. You know how you have to be careful with these things? But, wow, this is a long wire, and it's even got a knot in it. What do you think? Can we get the light to come out that end? Well, how about if this was like a garden hose in your yard, you know, laying on the ground? Could you shine a flashlight in one end and get light to come out the other end?
No.
I've never tried that, but I don't think it would work. But this is fiber optics. This is a special kind of plastic. So anyway, yeah, hold that up, we can see it. Let me shine this here. Can you hold that up higher so we can see it? Oh, thank you, you're a good helper. You know, if this was all the way across Denver, we could get the light to come out that end. Even all the way across Colorado, if it's good fiber optics, all the light goes through, oh, the whole thing's kind of glowing here. So this is kind of cool stuff. Thanks for your help. And so they're trying to make better fiber optics, you know, how to improve this stuff for communications. And what are they studying to get better fiber optics? They're studying corn. Because God made the first fiber optics when He made corn, and we're still learning from it. That's kind of like the lightning bug was. Learning things from nature that God put there for us to use. So that was interesting. Yeah, fiber optics. Let's see, I'm still on day number 3, and I'm thinking about plants now. Of course, the leaves have fallen off the tree now. But in the spring, we have these beech trees. And so here's a leaf. Notice how you got all those veins, those lines in it? Kind of cool the way leaves are made. It turns out that the beech tree, in the spring, and you have some of those around here, the whole leaf grows. Okay, you know, they're 3 or 4 inches long, and they're all folded up inside like a pod. And then one day the pod breaks and the whole leaf just unfolds, like this picture shows. Here, I brought kind of a little illustration of it. I just made this out of paper. So this is a big beech leaf. Here it is all folded up in the pod, and then one day the pod splits, and your whole leaf shows up. Kind of cool, huh? See, I was thinking Christmas, so I made this side red, but the leaf is green. Look how that folds up. Kind of looks like a, what's that, an accordion? Yeah, you could do that. So it's the pod is folded up, and then the leaf kind of breaks loose like this. Well, there's lots of folding in nature. You know, God folds up the wings of a butterfly, the way they unwrap. And so scientists have looked at this and thought, I wonder if this might be useful to us, this kind of folding. And they have used this kind of design. When we put things up into space, they have to be all folded up inside the rocket to get up there. And then they have to open up to collect sunlight and things like that. And so they're using this kind of design for some of the satellites. I think that's what that picture is. Oh, that's the space station there. And when you look close, can you see the zigzag? They're using the design from the beech leaf to design space satellites. I like all these ideas from nature that God put there for us to find and make use of, and they're just waiting for us to find. Hey, I got a couple more plant ideas. We're still on day number 3. Oh, this is a curious leaf. I see it's a fossil on the left and the actual leaf on the right. You might have some of these, I'm sure you have some of these kind of trees around your area. Does anybody know what tree this is? Especially maybe our 8th graders. Are you guys into trees? This starts with a G. Oh, yeah, well, you missed it, huh?
It's a ginkgo.
It is a ginkgo. This is called a ginkgo leaf. Yeah. It's very unusual. In fact, this was found as a fossil. That's what that print is on the left. You know, they could just see like in a rock sort of a shape of it. And they thought that it was gone. They thought that this leaf had, you know, kind of evolved into new kinds of trees. But then we found living ginkgo trees. And they have them, we have in Indiana, you have in Colorado. I like this kind of leaf. They call it a living fossil. It's been around since the week of creation on day number 3. It hasn't changed at all. It hasn't gone extinct. We still have it. Another thing from day number 3 that God made. And here's one last idea when it comes to day 3. In Colorado, you can once in a while find petrified wood. You can't burn that in your campfire, can you? The wood has turned to stone. That's interesting. Sometimes when wood gets buried, it kind of just dissolves away and it turns to rock. That's what that thing is. I don't think that happens anymore. If a tree gets hit by lightning, it just falls apart. You know, things kind of disintegrate. In this case, you had to have a log. The tree got knocked over, and then it got rapidly buried, and then water in the ground has kind of changed it to stone. I think that objects like that are souvenirs from Noah's day, from the flood. That's when lots of trees got buried quickly, and that's probably where most of our fossils came from. So anyway, you have some petrified wood in Colorado. We don't have any of that in Indiana, but you got some neat places here. Wood turned to stone. We got to move on here. We're going through the creation week. We've got a few more here. So we are now up to day number 4. This is my favorite day of creation, because this is when the skies show up. I got a whole verse to go along with this. It's the sun, moon, and stars. Day number 4. This is Genesis 1, verse 16, and it says, "And God made 2 great lights. He made the greater light to rule the day." What was that, the greater light? What is that?
The sun.
The sun, of course. "And the lesser light to rule the night," the moon, "and he made the stars also." That's why I like day number 4, because this is 99% of the creation, all that neat sky that God made. Let's look at these for just a minute here. The sun. So here's the greater light. Looks like someone kind of took a picture of it. I don't think that airplane is landing on the sun, but there is the sun. And looks like it has kind of some details on it. Yeah, think with me for a minute. Now, the sun, it doesn't look very big in the sky. How big is it really? What if the sun was hollow, like a basketball? Could you kind of poke a little hole in it? Do you think that you could put a whole world inside the sun? Now, this is a big world that we live on. You know, this is Earth. Well, you could fit a whole world inside the sun. In fact, how many do you think you could fit in there? Remember, we got this big empty round ball, basketball. We want to put Earth in it. How many could we fit in there? Do you have a number for us? You got the answer right there. I thought we were going to have to work up to it. She said 1 million Earth could fit inside the sun. That is correct. If you do the math, they'd be like little BBs inside a basketball. The sun is so huge. By the way, you see that little dot? I put a circle around it. That's how big the world would be compared to the sun. It's a pretty good place we live on. Even Colorado's a big state, but the sun is huge. Of course, the sun is not hollow. It's filled with energy and radiation, and it's the way God made it.
The sun's supposed to be yellow.
Yeah, now here's the lesser light that rules the night. This is the moon. It doesn't have any light of its own. It's reflecting the sun, and it does a good job. Don't you like a full moon? And sometimes it looks like a fingernail, a crescent moon. And so just this wonderful object, kind of like a night light for us. Think with me for a minute. What if we would go to the moon? Okay, that'd be a good, we could do that over, Christmas break. If you were going to go to the moon, let's see, how would that work? Could you bring a fishing pole along? There's no water on the moon. You wouldn't need an umbrella either. Now there is some gravity on the moon, and so you wouldn't float in the air. You could walk around, but you wouldn't weigh very much. In fact, if you weigh, let's say, 120 pounds here in Colorado, if you go to the moon, you'll only weigh 20 pounds. You got to divide by 6. That's how a little bit of gravity there is on the moon. Well, you could jump real high on the moon. You'd be kind of, lightweight. Now, if you go to the moon, you better bring your own air to breathe, because there's no air. There's no wind. There's no blue sky. There's no weather at all. The moon is a very different place. I think I want to stay home. There's no water to drink either. So maybe you could visit there, but you couldn't live very well. Have you noticed before that the moon and the sun have the same size in the sky? I mean, these little round things up there. Interesting that they're about the same. The sun during the day and the moon at night. But they're not really the same size. The sun is much bigger than the moon. How come the moon looks the same size? The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun. Yeah, but the moon is also 400 times closer than the sun. So it's just a match. They look the same. That's why the moon can cover the sun, that thing called an eclipse that you hear about now and then. So it's kind of special the way God has set the whole thing up. Oh, this was the other part of day number 4 where God made the stars. Now here's just a picture of lots of stars. I think they've kind of made some different colors there, but you know how the sky can be full of stars if you get away from the lights? And if you take like a photograph of the sky, the stars do have different colors. This is different temperatures. Some stars are hotter than others. The red stars are kind of cool. The blue stars are extra hot. So there's all these stars. And so the question there up in the corner is, How many stars do we know that there are up to this year? Because we like to count stars with our telescopes. So I got a number for you. Now this is a guess, because you can't really count them. But the number of known stars is like the number 1 followed by 22 zeros. That's a huge number. That's how many stars we've actually photographed. In words, that's 10 billion trillion stars. This is why I like day number 4, when God made all those wonderful stars. They're all different. There are some stars that are called red giants. What if we had one of those instead of the sun? If we had a red giant star, we would burn up. Some stars are called white dwarfs. What if we had one of those instead of the sun? We'd freeze because they would be it'd be cold. There are some stars that kind of blink off and on. It's like they're winking at us. They go off, on, off. How would you like that if the sun kept blinking off and on? That would give us a headache. That would make us kind of dizzy. There are some stars like that, but not our sun. Thank you, God, for the kind of sun He gave us. That's a very steady light. So anyway, there's lots of different types of stars. Okay, now this next question is for the kids, for the young ones here. Let me put this up here. Whoops, maybe I don't have the next question. Let's see. I guess I was going to ask, what is the shape of a star? If you get close to a star, are they round, or are they like we draw them with 6 points? What are stars actually like? They're round. Gravity does that, makes them all round balls, kind of like the sun and the moon is. By the way, this comes along in day number 4 as well, at the planet Saturn. And we just don't have time to talk about all these neat things that God made on day number 4, because we need to finish up here. Time's moving on. So we're now up to day number 5. And this is where the first animal life shows up. Genesis 1:20. And God said, let the waters swarm with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth. So anyway, here's some fish and birds. Is that Nemo, that guy over there on the left side? You know, I was looking at these creatures and I'm thinking, maybe we know what God's favorite color is. Orange. Think about all the orange colors there are in nature, especially sunrises and sunsets. He likes that kind of color. And so all this comes along on day number 5 as the world is being filled up with interesting creatures. And, you know, God has some humor. He likes to make us smile. So here's just some of the other creatures that He has made over time. Here's some fish and birds. They make a good pet, wouldn't they? Actually, I didn't put my favorite one up there. It's, this guy lives in the ocean. He's kind of cute, isn't he? Just the fascinating animals that God has made in nature. And by the way, on day number 5, there's lots of other things. Yeah, here's one called an incisivore that God made. And it almost looks like a little dinosaur or something. It's got some feathers and he's saying hello. And so this also shows up. We find this in the fossils. And so God made this creature as well. Now, I'm still thinking of birds, and we got a few minutes left, so let me try something for a minute here. Can you guys help me for a minute? Can you stand up and kind of face the group? Just, yeah, come on, you as well. Okay, so you don't have to say anything, but can you line up here? They're going to do a little experiment with me. What I need to do is give you each a feather, so let me do that. Here's one. Okay, we're going to try a little experiment. Sorry you can't all do this, but this will work for us. Here you go. Hold on, I got more here. So our experts here are going to show us something. Here we go. Now these are all duck feathers, and they're kind of made in different colors. Watch what we do now. So okay, we kind of hold this feather up so we can see it. So what we need to do now is kind of pull on the side and pull it apart. Can you do that? They're wrecking the feather. Yeah, can you do that on both sides? Kind of give it a bad hair day? Oh, that poor feather. Yeah, you're good at pulling down. By the way, if it's real quiet, you can hear a little click when you pull down. Okay, so we messed it up now. Good job. So now the second part is to put it back together. Can you pull up on the side and get it to kind of reconnect? And then you can pull it apart and you can put it back together again. If you look at this with a magnifying glass, there's little hooks that grab each other. and you can unhook it, and you can get them back again. You know, as you guys are doing this, this reminds me of something. It's like a fastener that some of you have on your jacket or your shoes. You can push it together, you can pull it apart. It starts with a V. It's Velcro. Well, Velcro we find out now in our clothing, but this is God's Velcro. He put it in these duck feathers, because that's what it is, little flexible hooks. So no one really invented that. They found it in nature. It's another idea that God put there for us to use. Hey, good job on the feathers. Did you get it back together again? Yeah. Let me just kind of pick those up here to get them out of the way so you can go sit down. Thank you for your help. Can you give these guys a hand for helping me? I know that's kind of corny, but that's just another interesting design from nature. And here's a quick story on this bird, and you have some of these around Denver as well. This is the kingfisher. That's an interesting creature. This one likes to go fishing. And he sits up on a branch, and then he jumps right down into the water to get like a minnow. And when he goes into the water, he doesn't make any splash. He just kind of slips right into the water. So there's something else that goes along with this whole idea of the kingfisher. People have studied this to think how they can design different objects that we have, like trains. They have what are called bullet trains that go real fast. We don't have them in this country, but like over in Europe. And these bullet trains have problems that they make too much noise. And so they've kind of copied the shape of this kingfisher when they make some of these trains. And so here's the front end of one of these high-speed trains. They go like 200 miles an hour. We're going to start to build more of these in this country. And the thing is, they're making this thing designed so that it runs better by copying the shape of the kingfisher bird. We've shown several examples of this morning. We had Velcro, we had a light stick, we had fiber optics, and now even birds are being copied to make trains. It's a whole new way to look at science, studying how God made all these things for us to enjoy and learn from. In fact, it's made kind of science interesting for me. And here's one of the books that we have, and I kind of wrote that with one of my students. It's called Discovery of Design, and it collects a whole lot of these ideas from nature. And we've got a website, and this goes on and on. It's been kind of a fun way to look at science. And we need to finish up. We're already up to day number 6 here now. That was the last day. And that's when all the land animals show up, and also our first parents, Adam and Eve. This wonderful creation week when God made everything. Now, I don't want to leave anything out here, so what about the dinosaurs? Where do they fit in? We're commonly told that they lived long, long ago. I don't think so. I think dinosaurs were on day number 6. I think they were part of the creation. Everything was part of the creation week, wasn't it? So that's these creatures as well. That's kind of a picture book with a little girl watching the dinosaur. We all like these creatures, right? And it's not just for kids. We all kind of wonder where they fit in. Now the kids like to draw dinosaurs, so I've just put a few pictures there. Is that what you guys would come up with? I don't know, one kind of looks like a turtle, but they're kind of fun to draw. Well, let me just say, when it comes to dinosaurs, they were part of creation. And what was gone dead here. I just wanted to say, we're not sure what color dinosaurs were, but I think that they were beautiful animals, and they had their proper place, and they fit into creation. I know they talk about these things with their big teeth, and that they were mean and nasty. I don't think so. I think dinosaurs were wonderful animals, and they had their place in nature, at least at the start. And there they are. I don't know if they would have made a good pet, but they had their place in nature. Well, there's lots of different kinds of dinosaurs. This one is called a horned. Can you see that big thing sticking out of his head? Because we continue to study these, and I know you find some dinosaur bones around here in Colorado as well. They look very closely at this horned dinosaur that's kind of hollow. In fact, some of these horns were as long as this thing. Let me go back to that picture for a minute here. And so I was wondering, you know what dinosaurs would have sounded like? They had that long, I keep going back to him. That's one of these big dinosaur bones they find. But anyway, this is maybe what a dinosaur sounded like, because those big protrusions they had on their head They were connected with their nose so they could make some sound. Here's maybe what a Colorado dinosaur sounded like. That tickles. Can't you just imagine that kind of roaming across the countryside for miles as the dinosaurs would kind of communicate with each other? In other words, those were wonderful animals and they had their proper place. Everything did in nature. Well, this is a big bone that they have found down in Argentina. And that's one of the leg bones, just this part of the leg of a dinosaur. Look at the size of that thing. That guy's not sleeping. He's just kind of showing you how big this bone is. These were large ones. And maybe he looks something like that. That would be higher than the roof of this building, 70 feet. There were interesting creatures that, that God made. They weren't all big. I'm just going to end it here, our talk here on the Creation Week, a little bit more on dinosaurs. This is another kind that was very small. This dinosaur on the left was only as big as a hummingbird. That's all he grew. It looks like he needed to have his fingernails cut. Weren't there a lot of interesting dinosaurs that, that God made? And the list goes on, and we're still finding new ones day by day. Oh my, what do you think? Were there dinosaurs on Noah's Ark? Yes, there were. They came on the ark, they came off. Now maybe something else happened to them later, but they had their place. That poor dog, kind of like making fun of him, but I just kind of like dog pictures, and it's all part of enjoying this nature that we have. Now, by the way, as you do science, sometimes you hear the word evolution, which is the idea that one animal turns into another one. And this is one suggestion that dinosaurs turned into birds. That doesn't work. Dinosaurs had their place, God made birds, and they've always had their separate categories. Things do change a little bit. There can be different kinds of dogs, different kinds of cats, but this does not happen. So I'm crossing out that word evolution. Watch out for that. Not everything that's said in the word of science is true. So down to the last pictures here, there's a little boy with his dog again. You know, this verse in Ecclesiastes tells me that we are special. We are not animals. In fact, we're supposed to care for the animals. And this verse in Ecclesiastes says that God has put eternity in our hearts. That means we can pray to God, and we can read His Word, and we can appreciate what He's made, and we take care of the animal world. We're a special part of creation. So kind of neat as coming from Adam and Eve, our first parents, and we carry on. And we made it through our walk through the Creation Week. And at the end of Genesis 1, it says that it's very good. Of course, there's lots of problems in this world today, and there's sickness and accidents and things like that. But we can still see how God's put it all together for our well-being so that we can enjoy this world we have. How do you like that? We had everything from corn, and then we had the feathers of birds and everything between. So anyway, as you take science, you're not all going to become scientists, but learn all you can about nature. Because the more you know about rocks and leaves and birds, you'll see more around nature, and you'll enjoy life all the more. So you do your best in science. We got the best reason for studying nature because we know who put it all together. Hey, thank you guys for listening. I got to go. You got to go back to school. Thanks for letting me join your school today. Appreciate it.
So I noticed too that you might, as you watched this, have come up with some questions, which is good. Questioning is always good, especially looking for answers in the Bible, but also looking and observing things in nature and how God created stuff. It's wonderful. This is a great opportunity that when you go back, talk to your teachers. Talk to me next week. I was talking with the 8th grade there and talking about evolution as well, and how do we as Christians talk about it, and how do we talk about what God does. And so talk to people, talk to your parents. We always want to have a conversation with that. So you might not have the questions answered right now, but you can share them. Share them with your teachers, share them with me, share them with adults that are around, because we love to discover the things that God has made for us. Let's close with prayer, okay?